And hello, welcome to the Podcaster Hour. This is so amazing. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Ian Gray, and in this new episode, by the way, this show is from Ecom Live, as always, we help you launch your podcast through the power of Ecom Live. Now, I'm very excited because today I've got the wonderful Mike Russell on the show. This is episode 6, and we're going to be talking about how to sound awesome with your podcast. In fact, on your podcast, if I can get my words out today. How are you doing, Mike? Great to see you.
I'm doing fantastic. Just blown away by the intro and the music that was bubbling away underneath here. It's my kind of music. You know, I was getting a dance on here. Got my lights going round. It's feeling great.
It is awesome. Well, we realized relatively recently, maybe a couple of years ago, that we are kind of into the same kind of music, and you introduced me to State of Trance and all that kind of music.
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
which is
it's just hit episode 1000, so I think a milestone every podcaster aspires to reach, right?
Yes, and there was me getting excited. I've got episode 100 this week, but a few more years until I get to 1,000. So
we got 9 more times.
Yeah, exactly. If you put it that way, it doesn't sound so bad. So can see some wonderful people watching live. I can see we've got, now let's see if I can pronounce this, Flugelselschaft from Berlin in Germany. Great to see you. We've got Hudinil from snowy New York City. It's not snowy where you are, is it, Mike?
It's never snowy on the beautiful island I'm on the south coast of England. All the snow just disappears over the Solent, so...
Yeah, you're in the Isle of Wight. Beautiful part of the world. Another beautiful part of the world is where Joel Ahmed is from, Niagara Falls in Canada. Awesome to see you there. David's watching from Spokane in WA. We've got I am Jason Allen watching again from Salt Lake City. Awesome. Got Stefan watching from Sweden. Rob from Winnipeg. We've got a lot of Canadians here today. David Smith, what's David saying? Getting ready to start my work day. Won't be able to watch the whole stream, but it's good to learn something new to start the week. Awesome. And of course, as you know, this will be a replay. There's always a replay for these things. And the fabulous Tim Sorn is here. Great to see you, Tim. Shout out to Ian Gray. I love this from Alan saying, I need a better countdown page. Well, I don't know about you, Mike, but there's more to a live show and a podcast than the countdown timer. What do you reckon?
Yeah, absolutely. But it is when you get started and build up the energy, right? I love that there's a wonderful picture of you, Ian, like looking excited, and then the stars are floating past you, kind of floating through the universe just before you get started, which I think is phenomenal.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you for that. But there's so many things that can get in the way of launching a podcast. And today, in today's show, we're going to be talking about how to sound awesome. So Mike is Mr. Audio, really. He knows everything that I need to know about audio and a huge amount more. He's helped me set up my audio many times. So I'm really excited to be talking to Mike today. Now, if you've got any questions for Mike, do put them in the comments. Just put Q, and then the question, and then we'll get that question answered by Mike, which would be great. That'd be awesome. So do that. And also let us know if you have a podcast, if you are launching a podcast or if you're thinking about doing one. That's what this show is all about, helping you launch your podcast with confidence through the power of Ecamm Live. Now, Veronica says, your Christmas tree is supposed to be down, baby. I'm so...
That's what I think it was.
I know. Oh, you're too polite, Mike. You could have told me. No, it's not a Christmas tree. It is actually just a normal tree with some lights on it. But thank you for that. Awesome. Well, so I think it's time to get on with the main show. So we'll be with you just after this. This part is the live element. I'm just going to put the slide up and then introduce the show for the replay bit. So we'll be with you just after this. Hello, my name's Ian Gray. Welcome to the Podcaster Hour. In this episode, I'm joined by the awesome Mike Russell, and we're going to be talking about how to sound awesome on your podcasts and live shows. So without further ado, let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Podcaster Hour from Ecamm, helping entrepreneurs, business owners, and live streamers launch a podcast with success using the power of Ecamm Live. Grow your audience and expand your reach, and learn how to plan, promote, produce, and repurpose your live show and podcast. Here's your host, Ian Anderson Gray.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Podcaster Hour. This is the show that helps you launch your podcast through the power of Ecamm Live. We go live every single Monday at 4 p.m. in the UK. That's 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific. And in today's show, we're talking about how to sound awesome on your podcasts. If you have a podcast, if you're thinking of launching a podcast, do pop the name of that or what you're thinking about doing in the comments. And of course, if you've got any questions, just put the question in the comments. Just put a little Q just before that so that we know there that it's a question. Now, as always, this show is powered and sponsored by Ecamm Live. That's what I use for all of my live shows. It is awesome. And if you want to find out more about that, all you need to do is go to iag.me/Ecamm Live. But today, this is actually very exciting because this is the first time I've got a live guest in the virtual studio. I have had Colin Gray on the show before, but because he's in Australia, we had to record that before. So I'm really excited to be joined by Mike Russell, who is the creative director of Music Radio Creative. Audio production is his life. Mike is passionate about helping you to sound great. He presents a weekly live stream and releases regular videos on his YouTube channel about producing podcasts, cleaning up audio, improving the sound of your voice, creating music, sound design, and more. And you can check out his channel at youtube.com/Music Radio Creative. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ian, and what an intro. That was absolutely amazing. I can even hear wonderful cheering as I come in. You've got your audio sorted. It sounds great.
Thank you, Matt. Well, I have to say, you have been very helpful, integral, in fact, in my audio setup. So I really appreciate all the help you've been over the years. So thank you so much for joining me on today's show. So how did you get into this kind of world of audio and podcasting? Because as I said when I was reading your intro, it is a massive part of your life. I wouldn't say it's the whole of your life, because of course you've got an amazing family, you live in a beautiful part of the world, you have other interests, but audio is a massive, massive part of your life. How did you get started with all of that?
That's a really good question. Yeah, no, I've always been fascinated by audio since I was single digits in age. And I think it was actually listening to the radio stations back in the day, of course, when radio was a big thing. Now you say to kids radio and they're like, what's that? But I used to listen to a station in London called Capital, and they played beautiful jingles with pitch shifting and all these strange things that were happening to the voice. And it was then that I thought, I really want to be able to do that. So I was just like a kid who just wanted to play with and change the sound of voices, a bit like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, where he's using the talk boy and slowing and speeding up voices and stuff like that. And then I eventually discovered, oh my goodness, I could actually turn this into a career. Yeah, I kind of went into radio, worked in radio for 2 decades, started up a podcast, started traveling and going to conferences and meeting lots of other podcasters. And here I am today on a podcast. So this is like the pinnacle so far.
Well, obviously that is the quick story, and it is interesting. I remember back in the days in the 80s and 90s, I had these tape deck, and I would like kind of record little bits and snippets, and I'd sometimes have a microphone and plug it in the left and the right and go hello, 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 left and right. I was such a geek, but it was just great fun to do. And now it's amazing the kind of gear that we've got today. If we had bought the kind of stuff that we have today, it would have cost, I don't know, not millions, but we can get gear today that is so much cheaper, and we can start off actually fairly simply. And that's the next question I'm going to ask you, but which is about how we get started. Before that, I can see we've got quite a few questions here, and some of them are a bit technical. I do want to kind of answer these questions as we go along, and maybe you can explain what these mean. If you're just starting with podcasting, I don't want these questions to put you off. If you don't understand what these words mean, Mike's going to help us, but we are going to get on to how you actually get started, and then we're going to work our way towards advanced. But Mark asks, what is the best audio compressor? So first of all, maybe Mike, you can answer the question, which is, what on earth is an audio compressor? Do we need one? And what is the best one?
Yes, well, I do my best to simplify things. So if you've never heard audio technical terms before, I can make them simple, and I can do my best to cut them down to just the bits you need to know. So audio compression takes your voice, if you're a podcaster, and it takes all those loud bits and squashes them down a bit so that they're the same level as the quiet bits. Now, that's all very good, but it's squashed it down So then you need to turn it up a bit. So you squash down the loud bits, turn it all up, and then you get a consistent waveform. So it's the difference between hearing someone speaking and they're getting louder and quieter and louder and quieter and louder, and that's really annoying, and someone who's speaking at a consistent volume. In radio, they used to use audio compressors not only on the person speaking, but also on the output of the radio station, because it'd be consumed in many different environments, in the car, in the gym. And still today, that's how podcasts are consumed. So audio compression will essentially help you get heard in a better way.
Love that. So that's what audio compression is. One thing I remember listening to, the radio in the car, and I believe that a lot of radio stations, particularly more kind of pop music ones and speech ones, they compress theirs a lot, because if you're in the car, you don't want the music to get really quiet and then you can't hear it. So you put the volume up and then suddenly it blasts in your face. So that's probably another kind of example of that. But so to answer Mark's question, is that an easy question? What's the best audio compressor, or is that a more tricky one?
Well, I would simply say the best audio compressor is the one that does the job for you. It really depends what you want to do. There are many different compressors or different settings on compressors for different purposes, and not all compressors have the same settings. But the basic things you'll need are, and again, these are going to be technical terms, but you want to look out for a compressor that has threshold, ratio, and attack and release. And you'll get those in most audio editors. So if you're doing post-production, any compressor that's inside an audio editor now will work perfectly well. If you want to go to hardware, you can definitely use hardware. I myself use DBX compressors. I know, Ian, you've got one on your microphone as well. And what that will do is it will compress you in real time. So rather than adding compression on later when you're working in an audio editor, you're actually doing it now, and I'm doing it now on my voice, and it just keeps it at a consistent volume. So yeah, I mean, DBX, there's Behringer, there's so many different brands out there. Go and take a look at them all and see what works for you, and keep it really simple, I'd say, to start with.
Yeah, keeping it simple. And so I think that's really, really important. So we will go through some of the different things. We can maybe talk about the DBX a little bit later. And of course, one of the things when we're talking about live video, this is where there's the pre and the post, or the, production side of things. Obviously, if you're going to do a podcast, you can then edit it afterwards and you can compress the sound afterwards. But if you're going live, you'll need some special either software or hardware to do that. So Mark Mason asks another question. Now, I'm not sure whether you're going to be able to answer this, because it's a Mac question, although you still do have Macs. You've moved a lot on the PC. But Mark asks, Mike, have you experimented with Adobe Audition on the new Apple M1? I've seen some weirdness, but not sure it's M1 specific. So just to clarify, Adobe Audition is the most amazing audio editing software from Adobe. The M1 chip is the new chip in the new Apple Macs, which is really cool and snazzy. But Mark is saying he's seen some weirdness. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, that's really strange. Well, first of all, good to see you, Mark. And I have not used Audition on an Apple M1 chip yet. So I have no idea what exactly that weirdness is, but hopefully it'll get sorted.
Well, hopefully. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I've actually avoided getting an M1 Mac. I'm usually an early adopter, but I think with things like this, we'd need to wait a bit before the little kinks get ironed out. Unfortunately, the kids' PCs just died. So I've decided to get a Mac Mini with the M1, just for testing purposes, of course, and just to play around with it. But they needed a new computer. So I'll let you know how we get on. Quick question from Tim, and then we'll move on with the question I was going to ask you. So Tim is asking, what kind of headphones do you all use? What features should I look when buying them? And I think this is a great question. I'm going to actually ask a pre-question before you answer this, which is, should we wear headphones? Both of us, you can see Mike and I are wearing kind of nice big headphones. You'll see a lot of live streamers don't wear headphones at all. What's your thoughts on wearing headphones, and what kind of features would you look at when buying them?
There's an argument both ways, I'd say. It's a good idea, especially if you're performing an audio podcast, to wear headphones. You don't need to if it's you giving a monologue, although I would advise it on the basis that you can hear any mistakes you make. So if you're too close to the mic and you do some pops, you can hear if you're popping. If you're off mic, you can hear if you're off mic, things like that. Same with if you've got a guest and they haven't got a good mic technique, better to catch it at source rather than have to make it sound better later. Although it can look strange if you're on camera, right? I think Joe Rogan used to wear headphones. I'm not sure he does anymore on his video podcast. And I do think big elephant style headphones like those that I'm wearing, even though they're very good, they look a bit weird on a video podcast. Although if you're talking about audio, I think it's okay. And you, Ian, you're looking really good in your Bose Quiet Comfort, the airline pilot's favorites, I believe. And
is that right? Yeah.
I'm curious actually to know if you use the noise cancelling feature when you're doing a podcast on there. Can you switch it off and on? Do you have it off or on when you're podcasting?
I haven't quite decided yet, actually. So I currently have it on, although I've got one ear off slightly because I want to hear myself. But one thing that I'm going to be doing, as I'm kind of changing things all the time, I'm buying new gear, is I'm probably going to plug it in, or because I've got a new Rodecaster Pro that I want to play with, or I will switch it off. I'm not convinced by having noise cancellation when you're doing it, because I think you want to be able to hear your own voice. Do you kind of listen to your own voice? Do you put your mix through so you can hear yourself while you're speaking?
Yes, so I put a real-time output through so I can hear my voice in real time along with any music I play and a guest as well. The reason I was curious about the noise cancellation is I find that obviously good if you are traveling or on planes, which none of us have done much of recently. But when we could, I used to find it very good for kind of blotting out the sound of the engines and stuff like that. But I would find, I think, if I had like the noise cancellation on, I'd feel a bit dizzy, because it kind of sucks out all the outside noise. And I think, it's just nice to have a little bit of, like you say, you have one ear slightly off so it doesn't disorient you in a way.
Yeah, I think noise cancellation does disorientate you for this kind of thing. But oh my goodness, these are the best thing I ever bought, because particularly if you have noisy kids running around all over the place. I love my kids, but I just
don't even know they're there.
It's just a bit of sanity. Awesome. I could see Todd Brooks is here saying, I have a relatively new podcast, 25 episodes about learning to sail, called Anchors Away. Are you putting that on Anchor? That's the question.
Yeah, that's the question.
Awesome. So we've got some more questions, but the next question I wanted to ask you, Mike, is if we're just getting started. So we've had some quite techie questions about compressors and M1 chips and stuff like that, which is great. But if we're just getting started, quite often people can feel overwhelmed. They think they need the latest gizmos. They need like a fancy mic like yours or maybe like mine. They need a Rodecaster Pro. They need a DBX. If you're just starting out and you're a little bit worried about the tech, what's a good place to start? How do we get started with having awesome audio?
Yeah, no, I think you've hit the key absolutely perfectly there, Ian, by saying you can start out really simple. I look at my own audio journey and setting up my own podcast studio. I didn't start with the gear that I have in front of me now, and I'm very aware of your journey, Ian. And I remember how you started off with, the microphone, then you introduced the compressor, but you just kind of got started, and you've done a lot of stuff on your phone as well, using the phone microphone, which is perfectly capable. So for those who are suffering overwhelm, the most important thing you can do is get yourself a really decent microphone. And you don't even have to worry about mixing desks and audio interfaces and XLR cables and all of that. Like, if you really just want to get started and sound good, I will say this now, in 2021, I'm saying this, USB microphones for those starting out are a great entryway to get started without too much overwhelm. There's some really good USB mics out there.
Did you actually just say that? This is going live. You realize that, Mike?
Oh, no, really? The technology has got better. I mean, a lot of the bigger companies, certainly in 2020, got on board. I did a video on USB microphones, and certainly there's a few companies out there that have really hopped in and upped the game. I used a few of them when I was traveling back in 2019 now. I got to take some USB mics with me and use them when I was on the move, and they worked really well for me. When I needed to record quickly in a hotel room, to plug the USB-C into my MacBook and just record something was really, really easy.
Awesome. Well, I remember watching that video that you did on YouTube. So Katie from Ecamm repurposes this show into a blog post. So I will remind Katie to put a link to that video in the notes for that, because it's great. So I started off with one of these things, the Blue Yeti. A lot of people use, has its fans. A lot of people don't like it as well. It's okay. I was very happy with it to begin with, but the problem is it is only USB, whereas something like the Samsung QTU has USB and an XLR. So do you think getting a microphone that has both XLR and USB is a good investment, because at least then you can get some extra gizmos later on?
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly leave the option open. There are a few mics like that. Like, as you mentioned, the Samsung Q2U. I think the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X now from them. Although the audio quality on that one is not as good as some of the other mics that you can pay a bit more for, but it is at the budget end. There's also the Blue Yeti Pro that I think is USB and XLR, but it really depends what your purpose is. If you know that you just want something simple, or you're going to be traveling lots, USB. But if you are going to be in a studio or in a recording space week in, week out, that's when I'd advise go and look at the XLR, get an XLR cable, hook it into a DBX and all of that. And when I say DBX, for those that don't know, that's a well-known brand of audio compressor. It's a hardware box that you plug your microphone into, compresses it, makes your voice sound better essentially, and then you feed that into your computer.
Awesome. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So I can see a question from Wes here who says, what's the best external mic for an iPad Pro? And bonus question, since there's only one lightning port on the iPad Pro, do you have a connector suggestion that will allow you to add a mic and a camera? So I suppose the first question is, Mike, do you think recording on a device like an iPad Pro is a good idea? Do you think that's going to be okay? Or do you always recommend doing it on a computer? Also, if you can answer his question about, is there a good microphone solution for an iPad Pro?
Yeah, I think it's totally possible, certainly with the technology available today and Apple making it super easy to do those things, to record on your iPad Pro. I do have to confess to having not used Apple products for a while, apart from my trusty MacBook. I'm not very familiar with the iPad Pro and what you can plug into it and connectors. So I don't think I can give a really good answer here right now. But if you'd like some further information on it, or you'd like me to look into it and give a few suggestions, I'll fully hold my hands up and say, I don't think I have an answer for it right now, but I'd be happy to look into it and tweet. So if you want to give out my Twitter, very happy to look into that.
So what is your Twitter?
At iMikeRussell, which is ironic because I'm like an Apple product with I in front of my name. At iMikeRussell.
Oh, that is funny. Well, I've played around a little bit with this. So I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on this, but I think you can buy connectors. You can buy one with you plug it in via Lightning, and it's got a USB and it's got Lightning as well. So I think you can put both in. How that will work. So I do believe the Blue Yeti can work with that. I've not tested it though. So I think the answer to that is yes, it can work, but we can't really help you any more than that. So
technically, you could plug any USB microphone in that you liked if you had a connector like that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, I believe so. And I know we're kind of a fan of the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, and I think you can plug those into iDevices as well using that solution. Although I haven't had much luck with that, playing around with it, but I have seen some YouTube videos that do show how you do that. Yeah, it is possible. So I just wanted to say, if you've just joined us, this is the Podcaster Hour from Ecamm. My name's Ian Answer-Gray. I'm joined by the fabulous Mike Russell. We're talking about how to sound awesome on your podcasts and live shows. So if you've got any questions for Mike or for myself, do pop them in the comments. Just put the letter Q at the beginning so we know there's a question. So I did warn you about this, but I think it's at that point in the show where you do need to give us a little tour of your studio because it is awesome. Now I have to admit, I have been in person to your studio. This was before COVID, I have to say. Although you have added a lot more. You've got a desk and you've got, oh my goodness, just give us a little tour so we can have some tech envy.
Absolutely, yeah. In the last 2 or so years, this studio has definitely changed from a room with a desk and a few units in to, well, let me give you the full-on sky bird's view. There's the bird's eye view. So you can see that actually that is the desk there that Isabella sits at, my co-host and wonderful business partner at Music Radio Creative. She sits there. She's got a Tascam Model 12 sitting over there to do her mixing and recording. And I also hook that into my desk so I can put her audio out onto the live stream. She is working with a Mac there, as you can clearly see. If you are really eagle-eyed, you look to the left of your screen, you'll see a couple of desks sitting there at the side. And yes, there's a Soundcraft Signature 10 desk there, and the Rodecaster Pro is sitting there, glowing away under the hue of the LifeX lights. There's a Neumann TLM 103 over there on Isabella's desk. She's using a Logitech Brio 4K. There's a Sony Alpha camera over at the side that gets her onto the live stream. There's an Elgato key light that is remote controlled from my computer. The big sort of umbrella thing, which you'll probably see better from this angle is, well, that's bright. Sorry, apologies for the brightness there, but that is an aperture. Can't remember the exact model now, but it's something like the Mark II, Model 2 or something. Anyway, I sort of favorably call it the Peter McKinnon light. For those of you who watch Peter McKinnon on YouTube, fantastic film editor, photographer, that's the light he uses. It takes up about a quarter of my room, but still it provides amazing lighting. Over here on my desk, as you'll see, this is a producer's audio desk, and I did a video on my channel all about this. It's a Zawor desk. I think it's the Mesa X, and it's just a beast of a desk. It has the space for 12 different 19-inch rack units to go in here, and I will take you through it all. Up there, I've got not the Shure SM7B. I've got and used that, but that's actually the Shure. I think it's the MV7, their new one. I'm speaking to you on an AKG C414 XL2. Under here, I'm mixing all my audio on a Soundcraft Signature 12 MTK desk, which is a multi-track desk. Let's go from left to right here. So over here, these two screens that are not on at the moment, I enable those for the live stream, and I get confidence monitoring in front of me so I can see which camera is live, and I can quickly see a multi-view screen as well of all the cameras we use to do our weekly live streamed podcast. Underneath that, I have the Behringer PowerPlay 8000, I believe, HA 8000, and it's a great headphone preamp. So it allows you to plug in up to 8 different headphones and offer 2 different audio sources. So using this, I get to listen to myself pre and post processing. So pre is just the raw output from my mic, and then post is what you'd be hearing on the live stream. Here, I had a rack custom built to fit in 2 Elgato Stream Decks, and I can push buttons on here and change the camera angles. I've got a Furman power conditioner there. Power conditioners are great if you're working in audio and you want the least amount of noise coming from your power sources into your desk and into your processors. Over here on the right-hand side, it's my rack of DBX units. I've got 2 DBX 286Ss, microphone processors. So there's one for me and one for my co-host Isabella. And then I run all of those into the Soundcraft desk, and then the output of that goes into my DBX 215S. That's an equalization module. And then into a DBX 166XS, which is a compression module, and finally out to the live stream. And if you manage to follow all of that, then you deserve an award.
Well, I think you deserve an award for managing to remember how that all works. Because, I don't know, if you're like me, you spend a lot of time setting it all up, plugging it all in, and then you forget how it all works.
Absolutely. Oh, and I wanted to say one of the best upgrades I made recently is this. This is my trackball that I use for audio editing. Now, I was a mouse user for years and years, refusing stubbornly to change. I was very happy with my Apple Magic Mouse, but since I moved to, I think they're Kensington trackballs, oh my goodness, they say you just never go back to using a mouse again. And I have to say that's true. Like I don't know if you've ever used a trackball, Ian, how you found it or...
Well, I shouldn't really admit this, but I don't even think I've come across them before. They look amazing. So
gotta try them out.
I told you before we started the show, Mike, you need to stop trying to get me to buy new stuff. In fact, I think I can see Jeff C is here. Hi, Jeff. Hope you're doing well.
Hi,
Jeff. You just can't have nice things, Ian. That's great. Yeah, it's just like, oh my goodness. So that's awesome. Thank you, Mike. It is an amazing setup. But of course, this has been a journey for you. This is not something you've started off with. This is something that you've progressed over time. So you don't need all of that for a live show, but those are all the different elements that you can have. Awesome. Let's get some more questions here. Live for Wonder, what's the best way to control audio levels for videos and music in Ecamm? Despite using the mixer in Ecamm, I still get uneven levels for viewers. Now, obviously, Mike, you're mainly a PC user, so you're not able to use Ecamm on a regular basis. But, in Ecamm, we've got sound levels window panel where we can alter our levels. We can alter our guest levels if we bring them in. So I can, for example, bring your level down. It seems a bit unlevel for viewers. What would you suggest if you don't have a mixer? Is there a way that you can test things out? One thing that I've done, I've tested Gone Live and then listening to it back, but that's not a great way, is it?
Doing a test stream to check all your settings are good. good. Definitely, I would highly recommend that. Set up a private YouTube live stream it out, wait for it to process, watch the video back, and see if there are any errors. You, Ian, may be best placed to say if there are any further audio features inside Ecamm Live. But if there is indeed a mixer there, then I'd suggest looking at the levels you're getting. Do you get visual feedback on the levels on each audio source inside Ecamm? How exactly?
Yeah, we can. So if I just go into live demo mode here, I don't know whether you'll be able to see this, Mike, but so up there we've got. You can see I'm using my Scarlett 2i2. So if you say something, Mike, we'll see your level going. So you're coming through in the audio level there. So I can actually probably boost you up a little bit just to get our levels better there. So I think that's usually what I would do. I mean, we didn't do this at the start. We probably should have done, which is just to test the levels. So I could go 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
So we're going a little bit into the red there, but that's how you could do that. So
Okay. Well, so regarding that, obviously you have a super mixer, and what I really like about the mixer inside Ecamm Live is that you have the ability to see not only the green, which shows the bulk of your audio, but then as you go a little bit louder, you go into the yellow there on Ecamm, and then if you peak, obviously you go into the red. So the first thing is you want to make sure none of your audio sources are going into the red, and then just like Ian's got it set up there on the screen share for those of you who get to see the video. Sorry if you're listening on a podcast, I'll describe it for you. But essentially, you want to be kind of, I guess, tickling the yellow with all your levels and going nowhere near the red. So if you can do a test on all your levels before you get started and get them all in the same place, hopefully you'll be good there. But when you say that the sound is uneven, that may well be an issue with wherever that audio is coming in from. So it might be that your microphone is completely raw and unprocessed. And then when you get loud, it gets louder. And when you get quiet, it gets too quiet. And that's where I mentioned compression might be a good thing to introduce somewhere in your audio setup to level out the sound.
Definitely. And we'll come on to compression a bit in a little bit. So just a question from Meredith, who's asking, what do you do to help guests sound better? Those who don't have an external mic and refuse to get one. So you can spend all your time, getting the most amazing microphone. I don't know how many, guest interviews you do, Mike, but have you had this experience where you bring somebody on and the audio really isn't that great? What do you do?
And they're using either the Apple AirPods, which are, they're not too bad for phone calls, but for podcasts, maybe not. The other thing that's really bad is someone's wearing some headphones and the microphone is attached somewhere on the wire and they've got it on their shirt and it scratches against their shirt. So you hear the shirt scratch, or maybe, they're wearing earrings and the earrings are clattering as they're chatting and things like that. Things that hopefully you can prevent before you start recording. So if you notice the mic is rubbing up against someone's shirt, or there's some jewelry kind of jangling around, hopefully you can just say, look, listen, is it all right for you to change that, or just move where the mic is so we don't get so much of that. There's not really much you can do. You're at the mercy really of the best kit that your guest has. Something I've known podcasters to do in the past, if they're interviewing a lot of people, particularly if it's someone well known, and then it turns out they don't have a very good audio setup, to actually just mail them out or recommend, something for them to get. It's not going to cost, major money. Maybe a $20 or $30 headset will get you the audio you need. Something like, I've got a Sennheiser headset that I use to do Zoom calls. I bought it during lockdown. I was like, I can't buy one of these cheap headsets. It has to be something well known. I'm going to go for Sennheiser. And I tell you what, I've tested the mic out on it. And while I wouldn't use it to record a podcast, if a guest of mine was using that headset, I'd prefer it much more over, some of the AirPods and internal computer microphone solutions. So maybe something like that.
Yeah, I've heard that before, just, buying a cheaper microphone or headset. If they're really bad audio and you've got the budget, then that might be a good thing to do. But there's the next question from Mike, who's asking, how do you add compression to a live stream? And I was going to ask you this later, but we've talked a lot about compression, so we should probably talk about this. Yeah, and you've mentioned the DBX to success. I thought actually what might be quite good is for me to show my setup, and you've been able to help me with this a little bit. So let me just get my Epoch cam running. So hopefully this is going to work. Let's see. Now I hope you love my standing desk, by the way.
I love
which is very high tech. We've got some paint pots with the desk in here, and then I've got some box files to put my Mac up there. But I've got my teleprompter up there, so it's state of the art.
Is that a super duper cooling fan underneath the Mac?
It is. This is a super duper cooling fan. Yeah. Yeah, it's very good, and I can adjust the levels there as well. So yeah, underneath here, this is the DBX2X Success that you recommended that I get, and then I've got it plugged into a Focusrite. So the DBX2X Success is certainly one way. It's one way of actually adding compression to the mix. That might be one way, but there's probably other ways as well you can tell us about. If I show my my camera hit of my DBX2X Success, maybe you could just take us through some of the settings and what we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, so if you go to DBX2X Success, the first thing you'll do is you'll plug your microphone in at the back. And the first dial there, you can see that Ian's showing you, labeled mic preamp, is essentially the level of the microphone you're sending in to the processor to be compressed and enhanced. So you want to be twisting that dial so that you kind of go nicely into the yellow, but definitely not into the red. So I think, Ian, if you speak, we might see the lights light up.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Yeah, so it might be a little bit on the low side, that.
You can change that just by, pushing the dial up a little bit, but still you're sounding fine. So that's okay. Next to that, you've got a 48-volt phantom power light. Now, you'll only need this if you're using a condenser microphone. So if you've got a dynamic microphone like the Heil PR40 that Ian has, a short SM7B, anything like that, you won't need power. The high-pass filter that you have on there, that's a really good idea. That cuts off any low-end frequencies. So if you're recording near to a road or there's a busy road outside the place where you're recording, switch that on and it'll filter stuff out while not really affecting the voice at all. Process bypass you definitely want off. If you have that on, it bypasses all of the dials that go further down on the DBX. So then going along, we got the compressor box, and this has drive and density, which is a bit confusing because usually compressors have threshold and ratio. So really the drive, as you can see there, is much lower. You want the drive sort of at a low-ish point because the further you turn the drive up, the more it pushes the microphone signal into the compressor. So you want to keep that at a quite sane level, I'd say below 4. And then the density, that can go up a little bit. And essentially what you want to aim to do is get like 1 light coming on, maybe 2 lights if you're talking loud there. And usually about the position Ian's got it at is a really good place to start with, and then twist them around till you get the desired result. Moving on from that, you've then got a de-esser to add to your voice. This removes the sibilant sounds, the kind of sound, but that annoying kind of piercing sound that treble can produce. So you essentially choose a frequency, and then the threshold is how much de-essing you do. So if you've got a lot of de-essing, 1 light will come on, and if you've got really loads of de-essing, the 2 lights will go on, the green and the red light. So really, you probably want to just go into your mic and then twist the frequency round until you start to get a light coming on, and then push the threshold up so you get those lights coming on whenever you're saying S words. But when you're saying something else, you don't really want those lights coming on. Over next to that, you've got an enhancer. Those are essentially EQ dials. So LF detail is bass, HF detail is treble. LF will beef up your voice and make it sound bassy, and HF will just make the voice crisper and clearer. And then over at expander gate, this is something that when you're not speaking, the light will be red, and when you are speaking, the light will be green. So
Hello.
There you go. Perfect example. When you're not speaking, the light is red, and so therefore no audio is being heard at all. And when you're speaking, it goes green and you can hear the audio. This is great if you're in a noisy environment and you've got fans or air conditioning going off. The noise gate will close at the threshold that you set, and you won't hear those sounds. And then when you go above that threshold, when you're loud and speak into your microphone, the gate opens and you're heard. And then finally, next to that, at the very end, you've got the output dial, which essentially selects how loud your final output will be. And of course, because we've done some compression, you'll need to increase the gain because compression by its nature crushes down the audio. So you just turn that up until you get a nice level signal coming into your desk or your audio interface or your computer. And you're away. That's a very, very brief overview there of what's possible.
Well, that's very, very helpful. And so the DBX2X Success, that kind of sits in between your microphone and your audio device. Obviously, the thing about that is you'll need to then plug it into some kind of audio device like Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. That's, to some people watching, might sound a little bit complicated. I don't know. Are there any kind of simpler solutions that might not be as good, but any other solutions that you could recommend?
Absolutely. Well, the good news about setting up a compressor like that is that it's set and forget. So once you've done it once, providing you don't move rooms or change microphones or have a different speaker, if it's just you speaking into the same mic in the same room, you can set it once and forget about it. So that's the great thing about compressors like that. Some audio interfaces have a little bit of compression built in, so you might want to look out for those. Some USB mics now are coming with compression settings, but I think they're software focused rather than hardware built into the microphone. So again, an option there. If we're talking about live streams, so we don't have time to post-produce, if we were post-producing, of course we could add compression there. But if it's live streaming, sometimes you're able to use VST or AU for Mac users, audio unit plugins. Those are audio plugins, and some of those are compressors. Now, sometimes software will allow you to do that natively when you're streaming, or otherwise, if you're on a Mac, for instance, you might want to use software like Audio Hijack, and this is made by Rogue Amoeba, the same people that make Loopback that allow you to redirect audio sources plugged into your computer. So with Audio Hijack, you can take, say, the output of your microphone, say, I want to run it through a VST audio plugin, and then run that into Ecamm Live. So that's how you could do that on a Mac. And you could just say, well, for the audio plugin in the middle, I'm going to use a compressor in real time. You put that in the middle, and then that goes out to Ecamm Live. And that's a great way to do it. And you don't even need to buy hardware. You can just, spend however much it costs to buy the plugin and put it in your chain there virtually.
I've messed around with Audio Hijack, and it is awesome. You can play around with that and loop back. All software from Rogue Amoeba, is that right?
Amoeba. Yeah.
It's a funny name. Roof Rockers asked that question, is it possible to integrate VST plugins into Ecamm? And I think that would be the way I would do that. We've got quite a few more questions here, but just looking at the time, my goodness. Mark is asking, what mics would you recommend for video if you want the mic out of the frame? Now, for what we're talking about today, we're looking at making things into a podcast. So this is probably a good idea to talk about different types of microphones. I've showed my Blue Yeti, and I've got my Heil here. They're different types of mics. And of course, with out of shot microphones, what would you recommend? And maybe just give us a brief overview of the different types of mics that we can get.
Yeah, there's a couple I've had success with. If you want to be out of shot, generally people tend to opt for a shotgun microphone. Big, thin, long tube that you hang off a boom pole and point as close as you can to you. So if I had a boom like mic here coming in on my camera, I'd have it just there and I'd have it pointing towards my mouth. And because it's called a shotgun, it literally is that by nature. Wherever you point it at, it's going to pick up the audio from and reject the audio from outside of that area. So it's perfect, really. Won't be as good as talking directly into a mic like Ian and I are doing, but that's definitely the way to go for being out of shot. Something else I've had great success with is the condenser microphone from AKG. It's the P120. It's very, very cheap, and it's a great mic. It's about $99. And again, you can put that on a boom arm, and you can put that just out of shot, and it sounds really good. I mean, again, with this microphone, I could put it out of shot, and if I tweaked my audio levels a bit, you'd be able to hear me. You can probably still hear me, and it is out of shot, but of course, I lose what is called the proximity effect, which means the closer you get to the mic, the more frequencies are heard in your voice, and the better your voice sounds. And the further away you are, the thinner your voice becomes. And of course, if you're in a room with lots of background noise or echo, the more of the room echo you pick up.
Yeah, definitely. And so that microphone that you've got, that's a condenser microphone. The one I've got is a dynamic. So, of course, if I go over here, you're going to struggle. You probably hear me a little bit. Can you hear me a little bit, Mike?
Little bit, tiny bit, yeah.
Okay, a little bit. And that's probably the noise gate coming in there. So, yeah, just some things to think about there. But that's a great question. Jeff C., I agree with this. This happened to me, actually. I quit using Bluetooth headphones during a live because I had them disconnected in the middle of the show. On the Quiet Comfort ones, somebody phoned me on this phone, and it kind of went onto the headphones halfway through. So you don't want that. You don't want that.
I agree with Jeff. Like the same thing has happened to me, and that's why I bought that Sennheiser headset for when I'm doing like Zoom calls and bits like that, because I used to use Bluetooth headphones, and like the middle of a call, I'd get disconnected and it would blast out of my phone the conversation. I was like, no. It's only happened once or twice, but yeah, I think wired is definitely a good place. And also, if you're if you're working on something critical like a podcast, or you're doing post-production, really you should be working with wired headphones because of the latency between Bluetooth. There's kind of a split second, and it can be quite off-putting when you're trying to edit and play back stuff.
Awesome. Right. So another question from Michelle. So can I use the Scarlett 2 and compressor like the DBX at the same time? That's what I'm using, though, isn't it, Mike? The Scarlett 2.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So that's
just like
you absolutely can. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, Mike says, what is the simplest compressor to use to plug into my mic for a live stream, preferably one that does not have to be rack mounted? I think we kind of talked about that. Are there any other solutions other than the DBX? I mean, would you say the DBX is pretty simple once you set it up?
It is pretty simple. I'm actually just looking for a website I use. It's a company based in Germany. I use them because they kind of have really good reviews. So if you ever want to look for audio kit, they're called Thorman. I'm not recommending them as a company necessarily to buy from, but their website is quite good because they have a lot of reviews on, stuff like microphones and compressors and stuff. So that's THOMANN.de. It's a German site, but fortunately in English for those of us that don't speak German. What you can do, so I'm looking through now, compressors, gates, and de-essers on my computer, and I can see here that the DBX 286S, when I saw it in terms of popularity, is the third most popular. The second most popular is a $1,400 compressor, so I'm sure it would be quite popular and good. And then the first most popular is Thorman's own home brand compressor, so I don't know how good that is. But then there's other stuff like there's Neve compressors on there, FMR, Drama, all of that good stuff. It's you can just browse through and you can look at the reviews. And there are some tiny units. I mean, one I've not used, so I can't vouch for it. But this FMR audio unit, it's about $200, and it's much smaller than the DBX. It's not a rack mountable thing. It's like tiny. I'd suggest go to that site and have a look, and you check the reviews. And then, if you're in the US, go buy from your favorite retailer, B&H, Amazon, Sweetwater, whatever.
Awesome. That's great. We've talked a lot about tech, and, that excites us all. We're all geeks here. But there's more to it than just that. I mean, in terms of like how you can sound awesome in terms of your voice. Now, your company, Music Radio Creative, you do audio production, but you have loads of voiceover artists as well, and you've had a background in, you do a lot of voiceover stuff yourself.
Yeah.
Any tips on how we can approach sounding awesome audio-wise from a non-tech point of view, things that we can do ourselves?
If you want to sound better and just make your voice sound better, I mean, just practice as much as you can. Don't be afraid to put on headphones and monitor what you're saying and how you're sounding. It can be really awkward at first because nobody likes the sound of their own voice. But after a while, you get used to it. You can tweak your style, perfect your style, do some warm-up exercises before you start. All the warm-up exercises, Ian, because you've done them. I think you were the one who taught me the
yeah.
You might want to explain that, but that's a great. Is that kind of what you're asking me? Am I answering your question correctly there?
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was just, I think so often we can think about the focus of, from a tech point of view, but I think, just making your voice sound a bit more interesting, we can often sound very boring and speak on a monotone. So actually using different pitches in our voices, going up and down, I think is important, as well as our breath control as well. But I'm just interested from your point of view. I think obviously you feel that's really important, as well as getting the tech sorted. You've got to think about your voice and vocal health. I mean, that's a whole other topic, which we won't get into. I can see a question, I'm just trying to kind of fit a few more questions in. And this was actually something I wanted to talk to you about, which is Michelle Johnson is asking, what is the advantage of the Rodecaster Pro? It's basically a mixer. And I suppose, we could talk also about, do we need a mixer? Now, I've just got the let's get this the right way around. I just got this yesterday, the Rodecaster Pro, because everyone's talking about it. And although I'm really happy with my setup, I wanted to play around with it. I think there are some real advantages in this.
Absolutely.
I haven't worked them out yet, but I'm excited about playing around with these things. But maybe tell us a little bit more about your view on the Rodecaster Pro and mixing desks in general.
I think for podcasters looking for an all-in-one solution and who maybe want to travel and have something that's portable, I think the Rodecaster Pro is brilliant. And if you don't want all the technical stuff and you don't want a studio that takes, half a room with 19-inch rack mounts and all of that stuff, then you're going to want to look at the Rodecaster Pro. Rode have done an awful lot of R&D in making this, and basically they've said, what is everything that a podcaster could ever want, and can we fit it into one desk? And they've done it. So, you've got everything. In the past you might say, right, I need to play sound effects, so I need to get myself an external MIDI interface, or I need to get a soundboard piece of software for my computer. But the Rodecaster Pro has those sound pads on to play your intro and outro and your jingles and stuff like that. Then you say, well, I might need to take a Bluetooth call. In the past, you'd have to do a mix minus and, plug little dongles in and stuff and make it complicated. Well, Rode just said, let's make that integrated as a Bluetooth connection. And then you say, well, I need to run loopback on my computer or voice meter banana to get my Skype call or Zoom Zoom call or Google Meet call in. Well, Rode thought about that and just made it a USB connection coming in. So you kind of see the pattern of this. Oh, I need a DBX. Well, actually, Rode have put Aphex effects inside there and also give you control over the effects like compression and EQ and stuff like that. And that was actually rolled out as an update. So we didn't have access to change those settings, but now we do. So it's as complex or as simple as you like. At the simple end, you just plug in a microphone, you hit one of the presets and it just works. Or if you want to delve in, you can switch on advanced and you can change the high pass filter, the compressor, the EQ and everything else. You can the noise gate, you can set that all up to your own tastes. It's got a 4 headphone preamp. So you can have 4 headphones plugged in. You got speaker outputs as well. Have I done a good enough advert for the Rodecaster Pro? # not sponsored.
Yeah, well, it's kind of it is an awesome equipment. I mean, so yeah. But the other alternative is a mixing desk and a DBX. And what would you say? I know you don't like these questions, Mike, but which one would be better? I mean, you've obviously got, I think you've got a mixing desk and a DBX to make success. Yeah. Why didn't you go for a Rodecaster Pro?
I know what you're getting at. There are definitely, benefits to each scenario. So, for instance, why I like the setup I've got is I have more granular control with a Soundcraft desk. There's just more features. I can run audio to different places in different ways. So, for instance, I can bring in a source from, like I was saying on the Sky View there, you can see Isabella's desk. She's got her own mixer. I can bring all of that into my mixer and mix it out however I want. I can do all of that. So that's really helpful. But on top of that, although the Aphex processing is good in the Rodecaster Pro, I did do a shootout between that and the DBX processing, and I personally preferred the DBX processing. But saying that, the processing that you do get included inside the Rodecaster is very, very good. So it's a matter of taste, really, yeah. I suppose, and how much you want to be doing with it.
Definitely. And so just a couple of quick questions just before we finish. I think we've answered this question from Mark, but I'll just cover it again. Why do you both have headphones? Can you not use the speakers from your computers? And although Ecamm Live has got great echo cancellation, it's just a good idea not to do that. And I want to be able to hear it all. I always ask my guests to wear headphones. It just means fewer problems. And I assume you would agree with me on that one, Mike.
Spot on, really. Yeah, you should.
And Luke is saying, Mike's audio tutorials taught me how to edit. Great collaboration. Awesome. I mean, if you have not checked out Mike's YouTube channel, you definitely need to. youtube.com/Music Radio Creative. I think I've got that right.
That's the one.
It's awesome. I've got some more kind of technical questions. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to answer all of those now. We've run out of time. But I wanted to end with Kathy. I'm sorry about this, Kathy, who say, still confused at which microphone headphones to use for my live shows. We've talked about a lot in this show, and we've got quite geeky, but just to go back to the start again, if we're just starting off with a microphone, I mean, my personal view, I don't know what you would say, if we're just starting off on a show, then I personally prefer dynamic microphones because they're going to be better if your room is relatively noisy. If you don't have all the kind of soundproofing, then a dynamic microphone is going to be good. It's going to be in shot though. You've got to be up close to it. So it's whether you want it in shot or not. Just some final thoughts on that, Mike, before we finish.
So absolutely, yeah. Dynamic microphones is a great way to start, high PR40, short SM7B, 2 solid mics to get started. But really just a microphone in the sort of $200 to $300 range. You'll even find some nice mics around $100 plus. So start with that. And if you really don't want the technical worries, get yourself a USB microphone and get plugged in. Headphones, definitely great for monitoring, checking the audio sounding good and your guests are sounding great and on mic. Any kind of headphones will do. Closed back are best if you're doing a live show so that the audio doesn't leak out, and feedback potentially. So anything will do. Ian's got the Bose Quiet Comfort. I've got the Bayer Dynamic. I've used these headphones for years. DT770 Pros, they're excellent. I love these. So that's where I'd go with that, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Well, we're at the end of the show now. You do so many amazing things on your YouTube channel, but you do lots of other cool things as well. We've got Ref Room who's been asking about your audition presets, and he's asking for a cheeky discount code. But maybe you could tell us a little bit, about some of the stuff that we can find at your website, Music Radio Creative, and how we can find out more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best place to find out more about everything that I do is simply go to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Music Radio Creative. Go and watch there. And if you do want to reach out to me personally, ask about audition presets, discounts, or any question I didn't have time to answer on this show, just tweet me. It's @IMikeRussell.
There we go. I put that in the comments. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. It's been great to have you on the show. You do so much. You've been so helpful to me. You've been so helpful to everyone else. Kathy agrees, saying great show. So thank you, Mike, for that. Awesome. Right. Well, we'll leave it there. I will see you next week at the usual time. Next time, I just encourage you to launch your podcast with confidence using the power of Ecom Live. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for watching the Podcaster Hour from Ecamm, helping entrepreneurs, business owners, and live streamers launch a podcast with success using the power of Ecamm Live. That's it for this week, but do tune in next time. See you soon, and toodaloo!